What's up, everybody? How we doing? How we feeling? Welcome back to another episode of the Final Vibe podcast. My name is Kevin Reap, and alongside me is my co-host, Andrew White. Andrew, are you ready for episode 27?
Kevin, of course I'm ready for episode 27. It's not every day that you get to interview another man who has a last name that's a color.
That's true.
So
That's
it
very
feels
true.
really nice to be in good company.
That is a very good fun fact to introduce the episode. It's also a Thursday morning.
Thursday morning.
First time we've recorded an episode not in the evening, so this could have a totally different vibe. Maybe we'll do this every week. Maybe we'll never do it again. Time will tell. But let's jump into it. Final Vibe is all about the pursuit of legacy, and this podcast explores all aspects of life and legacy through discussions with all walks of life. Today, we are thrilled to welcome a father, a husband, and a video game coach, John Green. John, welcome to the show. You are joining us today from the powers of Zoom. Where are you joining us from?
I'm sitting in my my office overlooking my backyard in Richmond, Virginia. The beautiful Richmond, Virginia. It's like 30 degrees outside too, so I'm getting ready to enjoy the clutches of winter, which is very nice.
Yeah. I figure you probably get the same four seasons that we get here. You've lived in Missouri. Let's jump into that. You're from St. Louis. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was born in St. Louis in 1978. I think that was the year Space Invaders came out, to give the younger audience an idea of time frame there. And I lived there until I was 35. And then when I was 35, we decided to kind of branch out and look around the country for another opportunity, another place to kind of spread our wings, for lack of a better term. And Richmond is what I would coin as St. Louis East. It is very similar of a city. It has its different pockets, just like St. Louis does. And it has, instead of the Ozark Mountain Range, it has the Smoky Mountains. Instead of all the great museums downtown St. Louis, it has DC. And instead of like Lake of the Ozarks, we have the ocean. So it's very similar, just to the east.
Are there 3,000 places to go to high school in Richmond, Virginia, like there is in St. Louis?
Where you go to high school is very important here.
Very good. Very
which is funny, because when we looked at places to live, I did like this route. I still have the map that I made that went up through Ohio and then through Richmond, down through some coastal cities, back up through like Columbia, South Carolina, and Asheville, and through Tennessee, and all of those places, to kind of look for a destination to land. And of all of the different like environments that I went through and the type of people that I met, I gravitated to community that was very similar to the community that I came from, which is ironic in the end.
Sure. That's great, though. And speaking of high schools, you and I both went to DeSmet. I think if you add up the amount of time that we both spent there, it's still not enough to actually graduate from there.
I believe that's probably true. My legacy at DeSmet is not one of luster. That is for sure. I spent, I think, 2 years there, just short of 2 years, before it was recommended that I find another establishment to finish my high school education.
Gotta love the recommendation and move on.
Notwithstanding, I really enjoyed DeSmet, and I have a huge appreciation for them. They taught me so much just about life in general. A lot of the major connections I made at that school were with the adults, like the faculty and the people of that nature. And I met probably one of the most influential teachers I had there was my freshman year math teacher, because I remember his funny story about my youth, or at least I think it's funny. It's neat to me. I used to sleep through my math class because it was my first class in the morning. I tested into like this super special class with these super special kids, and it was, I don't know if it was college credit as a freshman, but it was a really big deal at the time. I didn't think it was, but everybody else in the class did. And I used to sleep through class, and I used to wake up and answer the questions that were on the board. And the kids in the class used to get mad at me for being able to answer the questions. And I remember that teacher defending me and saying, look, if you can find the answer, it doesn't matter what you do, right? Being able to find the answer is the end state of any type of math. And that was, to me, it was something that I've always kind of carried myself through life with, is that if I'm aloof, or if I need time off, or whatever I need to have in order to find the answer, I will unabashedly take it. If it's a nap, I'll take a nap. If I need to go for a walk, I'll go for a walk. I don't believe in adhering to social norms just for the sake of being a social norm, when it's an answer that I'm looking for, not social appreciation.
I think that's great. And I think if you pursue a problem and look for an answer in different ways than is the norm. Typically, you find yourself in unique positions.
Yeah, people always look at you a little funny. That's for sure.
Yeah,
You know,
that part too. Who was the math teacher?
I can't remember his name, so thanks for putting me on the spot.
Mr. Wendleton. We'll cut that
I
out.
remember how tall he was, and I remember the color of his hair.
Was he? Oh, well, I was gonna.
But
The
I do
guy
not
I'm
remember
thinking
his
of.
name.
Was
I remember the
bald.
textbook too. The textbook was it was like 6 inches by 8 inches, and then it was like 4.5 inches tall. And I read the whole thing. Well, I didn't read books back then at all, ever, but I read the whole math book because I was fascinated by it. It's funny because like what I find interesting, most people don't, like instruction manuals. Like if I get a real fat instruction manual, I'd love to read it because there was someone somewhere that had to not only engineer the product, but engineer a way to teach you how the product functions, especially for like highly technical products, and the ability to communicate the effect of engineering is, to me, I think that's fascinating. I'd much rather read that than like Lord of the Rings, because I don't want to be entertained. I mostly want to be educated for the most part.
Well, I can definitely resonate
I'm
with
kind
that.
of
I
boring
always
like that.
no, you're not boring. I always talk about how fiction doesn't usually get it done for me because it really does just feel like entertainment, and I would rather be challenged, or I would rather learn something or take one step forward toward productivity in some sense. Now, that's not to take a dig at anyone who loves fiction, but I definitely agree with you on that one.
Yeah, well, I think I have a good balance in my life. My wife loves to read. I mean, she's read thousands and thousands of John Grisham books and all of that, and she's exposed me to great media in over the course of her interest. So I think she's a great counterbalance to me. I'll probably talk about her more as this goes on because she's a true partner in my life. As I kind of want to expose who I am, one of the things that makes me unique and people frustrated with me is that I'm very unique in the things that I enjoy and the way that I see the world. So, it's just part of it. I can't watch a movie really twice unless it's a holiday movie. Like if I see a movie once, I'm good. That's it. I don't need to see it again.
I feel like I'm the same way in that regard, and I would definitely echo that. I feel like you and we're both unique individuals, and we can talk about the story of how we met. I think the best way to go through your life, let's just keep going from that high school moment because you have an amazing story, and I feel like for people listening, they're going to see the title husband, father, video game coach, and do the math. From born in 1978, you said, right?
Yes.
So that's unique. I think there's probably not a lot of people in their 40s who are coaching video games. How did we get here? Because I don't think you've been doing that your entire life, right? So
Okay, so I'm gonna take a step forward to take 2 steps backwards.
Perfect.
To speak to what you just said about being 40. In my life and in my career, I have been very talented and kind of a prodigy, for lack of better terms, for the different things that I have been asked to do. Was always the youngest in everything that I had endeavored to do. And there were always older people around me, people that could give me advisement and wisdom and direction and mentorship. Where I'm at right now in esports, there isn't that. It's pretty much me. There are other people of age, but not many. But there is no head football coach that's been coaching football for 20 years that I can say, what do I do about these students that are deciding to act a certain way or losing desire or whatever. I am, and we, my staff, are on the forefront of what all of this is and what all of this means from an esports perspective. So being the age that I am is very, very, very unique. It's funny. I went from being the youngest to now being the oldest. And to give you some scope on my career, I didn't finish high school. DeSmet had made a recommendation that I find another school to finish my high school education. I went to a school called Pattonville in St. Louis, Missouri, at Creve Coeur. And I enjoyed Pattonville to a certain degree. I just wasn't academically challenged, or significantly academically challenged, I should say. And I kind of just lost interest in school in general. So I ended up getting my GED. The GED process was very interesting to me, but I was very happy with it, which, as I look back on it, I think the whole GED aspect of our educational system is needed for people like me. So don't look down on people that have a GED because you never know what they're capable of. Anyway, so I finished high school and I get into college. College doesn't do it for me. I spent a little time at UMSL. I spent a little time in a community college. Took some engineering classes, which was really fun for me. But I wanted to make money, and I ended up doing some construction work. I did some window door to door window sales. The door to door window sales that I did were actually in the rougher neighborhoods in St. Louis. So, and for those of you that don't know St. Louis has some very rough neighborhoods. And I was the 5'8" Caucasian rolling around in a teal two-seater convertible selling windows and doors door to door. And it really kind of opened my eyes to all of the great culture that is in St. Louis, from the gay community to the black community to all the communities. Like, when you're going windows door to door, you really challenge yourself to respect everyone's life that you come across with. And it was a really humbling experience, because I came from kind of like a pocket of people that lived in the county in their own like little bubble. So I got to experience St. Louis as a whole. That went pretty well. I got promoted to like regional manager. I got my own office in Nashville. I was like 22 years old, had way too much power and money, and I had no idea what to do with it. So I ran that right into the ground. And then my brother introduced me to mortgages, and I'll speed this up a little bit, but introduced me to mortgages. And a guy gave me a book about FHA, which is first time home buyer loans. Said, if you read this whole book, it was like a 2,000 page manual, you'll make more money than everybody else, because nobody knows how these things work. And it took me about 30 days, and I knew everything about FHA loans. I ended up doing the mortgage industry for a while, and 2008 came around, and I had done a bunch of loans that I wasn't very proud of. There was a time to make money, and I took advantage of it. And I felt bad for that. Like, I felt remorse. So from that point forward, I kind of worked to rectify the issue, whatever that's worth. So I got a job with another bank, and I started designing them systems in order to do the mortgage transaction cleaner and within more compliance. And that was when the government came in and put a bunch of compliance standards out. I don't know if everybody remembers the Frank Dodd Act. And then I kind of worked my ranks all the way up through being a call center manager to being the head of IT for a bank. And then I ended up getting a position at City Mortgage, which is a pretty large bank, and designing their business to business systems. I ended up working with a bunch of amazing people there, like utterly amazing. I'd never experienced the access to talent that I had at City. Like, I still look back on it. Some of the most amazing people I've ever interacted with work there. That's out of O'Fallon too. So it's crazy that all that talent is like in St. Louis. You wouldn't think it, but it is. And then I had my kid, and I don't know. I kind of had a moment of, is this really what I want to be doing? And I said no. So I stopped. I stopped doing. And I was really happy with the systems that I helped design at City. I feel like the people who have access to all that information are doing great things with it, doing really great things with it. I believe that the mortgage ecosystem in this country, the production model and the compliance that it withholds, is second to none. And that's something the average public probably doesn't realize that's there, but it is. It's eloquent and amazing. And I felt like I did enough. I felt like I cleaned my slate there. So I talked to the wife, and the wife was like, "Hey, we one of us needs to work and one of us needs to raise the kid." And I'm like, "Well, I get fired a lot and you don't. So maybe you should keep the job and I should raise the kid." I'm raising the kid, sitting on the couch and playing video games. I see the Dota International giving away 4 or 5 million, and I look to my wife and I'm like, I'm better at video games than these kids. I know it. And
Game on.
that was kind of the start of it, right? And then I started researching like Hearthstone, and that turned me on to Overwatch. And I researched where we could move. I wanted to move out of the state of Missouri, because I felt like for me to. So just to go back just a little bit, I'm an advocate of change. If you're in an environment where you need things to change, I'm your guide out, right? Like, that's what I do for businesses. That's what I do for people. That's just my innate ability, is to make things change. And I realized at that point in my life I needed to do it for myself, and the solution was to remove the environment around me. So I had the freedom to make mistakes. I had the freedom to find myself and find what works for me long term. Fortunately enough, I have like a majorly supportive wife who's like, "I'm in, let's go." So we literally sold everything we owned, packed up a camper, right, one of those pull behind campers, and just drove around the country until we figured out where we wanted to be. We pit stopped in Richmond. We didn't expect to stay here. We are actually going to live on an island, um, and we just haven't left yet. So now here I sit. I am playing video games for fun. I'm raising my daughter, and I live in Richmond now. I see these Overwatch guys playing video games, and I realize their warm up processes are really bad. And so I create one and I post it on the internet, and nobody likes it but the elite players. Like I get this mass influx of interest from elite players. So I was like, well, maybe that was just lucky. I'm going to make another one to see if it takes off, and more elite players. And the first one was for a damage character. The second one was for a tank character. And just for those of you that don't play the video game, damage characters are like your jocks, and tank characters are like your chess players. So they were two totally different groups of people that were interested in what I was doing. So then on the third one, I was like, okay, I'm going to try purposely to make one that just blows up. And it did. And at that point, I thought to myself, okay, I've got something here. I've got a way of seeing the game that other people don't. And so I continued down that path for a little while. I got exposed to some pro level teams. They had asked me to come in and kind of commissioned me to do things for them. So I got exposed to pro level players, pro level coaching, things along those lines, which in hindsight hurt me in the scene, because the other people in the scene that were creating content with me, those people ended up becoming very, very, very successful. They are like name brands in the scene now, where I removed myself from the scene and started working in the pro scene, which injured my career, my star potential a little bit at the time. But in hindsight, it was the greatest thing that could happen to me, because I ended up getting frustrated with the game, just like everybody does. I took less time on the game, and a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, we got this college team." And I'm like, "Awesome. Well, why don't I come in and help you guys out?" And then I jumped in their Discord, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that there was a group of 6 kids, 18 to 22, that needed some adult supervision, for lack of a better term, that understood the gaming culture, that wasn't going to freak out over a Pepe meme, or uh, a nervous breakdown, or any of those things. And I helped see the guys through a bunch of challenges of, people trying to take their thunder, or them not wanting to play, or being frustrated that other teams are better. And I helped them through that whole process. And then we qualified for nationals, which was amazing. And we were a really good team. We were ready to go. And then we got the notice that one of our players was academically ineligible. So we had to look within our student body, and here's this girl who says, "I'll do it." Right? We had 2 people tell us no, and this girl says, "I'll do it." And so we worked with her. The whole team rallied around her. We actually qualified to go to LAN, which is where they have the tournament in person. ESPN is there. They find out that she had cancer and only has one shoulder. And she ends up being a center point of their documentary on the event. And so here I am on ESPN talking about girls playing video games. Like, I had no idea, man. I just ended up there. But I'm totally okay with it, right? Because I'm okay with whatever. And we ended up, tying for third, right, with teams that have full rides. A small community college out of California, just some kids that like to play video games. And then after that, I didn't know what would happen with that school, so I went to a conference, and I'm standing there talking to people. I'm trying to find opportunities with a school. I would really like to work with a school that is supporting esports. And there's this charismatic guy rolling around with like this cloud of people that follows him wherever he goes. He tells me he's with Mizzou, and I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm from St. Louis, so I know all about Mizzou." Last day of the conference, I'm like, "Hey, Mizzou, we should probably talk before this is all over." And then here we are.
We went to the longest lunch of all time.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that guy was Kevin?
Yes.
Am I putting the pieces together correctly? Kevin, you had a cloud of people walking around you?
That is not true.
You have a,
Yes, it is.
You have a celebrity mosh pit?
No, it was the first time that I was able to attend the NACE conference, and there was just some people that I had to meet. John was the last person I met and who I spent the rest of that day with, and then the evening, and then we touched base in the morning as well.
Yeah. What was the dinner like? You said you got food, right?
We went to an Irish pub, and I think I ate, and John just chatted the whole entire time while I just ate a cheeseburger.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah, I like to talk. If you haven't noticed to this point yet, I enjoy the sound of my voice.
As do I.
Well, I was going to say I do too.
We were interviewing each other for a long time, and what we came to the conclusion was that there was no alternative other than the fact that him and I needed to work together to make our dreams come true in the industry that is collegiate esports. And over the last year and a half, I would say we have done just that. So it's been pretty special.
Well, I'm going to jump in because I'm the non-esports educated guy, totally into esports, just don't know nearly as much about it as obviously you two do. So you said chase your dreams. What are your dreams for collegiate esports, both of you? I'm curious.
I think esports right now is a booming industry. And some people that are in it think it's going to be the biggest thing in the entire world. And there's a lot of people who are not in it who are still wondering what it is. Is it people that are just sitting in front of their TVs all day playing games? I think collegiate esports has come into the scene at the perfect time and allows an ability for the academic institutions to support this new booming entertainment realm, put the two together, and create what could potentially be the next generation of collegiate competition. Something not necessarily that will replace football and basketball, but if you talk to kids in high school, middle school, even elementary school, they care less about traditional sports and more about gaming. And I think it only makes sense that the colleges take advantage of that and offer these opportunities so that gamers are protected, colleges still have a foot in the door of what's next. And then eventually, I mean, John's already been on ESPN. Our program was on ESPN again 2 weeks ago. It's amazing how far it's already come. So my dream is just for Mizzou to be a leader in the space. And we also want to create a reproducible model that any school of similar stature and size to the University of Missouri, bigger and smaller, could take our model, look at it, implement it, and have success.
You want to be pioneers.
Correct.
Pioneers of the space, the Lewis and Clark of the video game industry.
That's right.
John, you said something earlier that was really, really interesting to me when you were talking about being 40 and having formerly been the youngest guy, the prodigy mind in spaces, and now you're the older guy in the space, and you are sort of blazing the trail for anyone else. Do you ever get excited thinking about the fact that you are literally one of the first to be doing what you're doing and the model that you can set for the future? Do you take great responsibility with that thought?
You know, it's funny that you say that because my wife said to me last night, she goes, this is the third time you've told me this today. And it's funny because I have to have a sounding board, and she's a great sounding board, and I love her for it. I see the future as something that is inevitable. I see esports completely different than the vast majority of humanity right now. And so when you ask if I get excited, I get more excited when I'm having a conversation with Kevin and I'm discussing integrating the different schools within the university and how our program and their, like the School of Journalism can integrate with each other so we can produce better stewards as graduates. When Kevin gets excited is when I get excited, right? That's what excites me because when I design these things, I know they're going to work. In fact, I don't design things that don't work. So that sounds egotistical, but if it doesn't make logical sense, if it doesn't fit together, then I just won't do it. So I believe everything that I work on is going to work. So I get really excited when other people kind of see what I see. And I'll give you an example. You asked me about where I see esports, right? I don't see esports as a game. A lot of people, when they hear the term esports, they think of two kids playing a video game, a nondescript video game, just colors on screens and so on and so forth. And I think that's unfair because when you hear the term sports, you don't think that. Sports is two kids in the backyard kicking a soccer ball. Sports is playing catch with your dad. Sports is going fishing, right? That's sports, man. Going golfing, that's sports. There's a lot of casuality to sports. And it's anything that has any level of general competition to it. And you can even compete on a casual level. And I think when it comes to esports, a lot of people don't tie those two binds together because when you kick that soccer ball to your kid in the backyard, you need to remember that somebody designed that soccer ball and that was a job. Somebody manufactured that soccer ball and that was a job. Somebody marketed and sold that soccer ball to you and that was a job. And those are all jobs that are in this industry of sporting goods, which is a subset of a larger just sports way of living, a sports lifestyle, a sporting lifestyle. And the same thing happens in esports, right? Esports has mice that you may play with, and there's someone that engineers that and designs that, and there's someone that markets it to you, and all of those things. And to me, right now, the people that are in those spaces are not the people that have graduated with the concept of being involved in gaming or esports. So my long play is that a school like the University of Missouri Columbia can be in a position to have students graduate with experience. So when the student comes out of the school, they would have 3 or 4 years of either business experience or broadcasting experience or journalism experience, all those things, and be able to go out into this larger scale ecosystem. And the people that they would be matched up to are people who were friends of elite gamers. They are people that were in gaming since they were 18 instead of school, right? And all of those things. And what it would allow for is a upgrade in the capability of the esports ecosystem that goes well beyond two kids sitting in front of monitors playing a video game, right? The ecosystem to it is much, much, much larger than that. And to me, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see collegiate kind of build that ecosystem between all of the schools and just the fundamental processes of integrating, education into it so we can produce quality members of the business community and things along those lines, journalists, broadcasters, all of that stuff. So the esporting community can upgrade through time. And hopefully at Missouri, we can be kind of on the forefront of that, of creating individuals that would excel in those situations. To me, I don't see any reason why Mizzou can't be known as the best school to go to for esports. To me, we don't have to win championships to be the best esports school. We need to put out the best students. That's what we're here to do. Semi-pro teams, their job is to win championships. Our job is to put out amazing students. And I believe that we currently have that opportunity to do that. And I believe that opportunity is just going to grow in the very near future.
Does that make you excited, Kevin?
It does. We're taking advantage of it every step of the way. And obviously our plan looks different than it did pre-COVID, but not different in that we haven't lowered our standards or the bar in any way, shape, or form. We've just had to push things back, but we have still accomplished a lot. And I think we will still continue to accomplish a lot. So it's been amazing to work with John on these. I can't believe how fast the time has gone. It has been 1.5 years already, somehow even longer than that. So pretty amazing. And it's cool to see the impact that this program has had, that John has had. It's unique in that most coaches for Overwatch, for example, are going to be 17 years old and just like a little above average. And they can really help you get better at the game, but that's it. And what John is able to provide these students is that, and then infinitely more. The wisdom, the ability to talk to these students, provide that real world experience and examples. And I think they value it. I think they're going to continue to value it. And I think they'll think back one day and go, oh, wow, that was actually an incredible experience.
I think they probably will. I think they probably will.
John, let me ask you a question. I entered the esports space. My background was in brand management and strategic communication And it ended up being a good fit as I was able to develop a brand new brand and had to communicate strategically. You entered the esports space with a background in mortgages and this desire of kind of engineering things in the educational manuals, and that worked perfectly for dominating the space. You said that you help people make changes. If someone's listening to this podcast right now, not saying they want to get into the esports space, but let's say they want to get into a different industry, profession, career, they want to do something different. They want to change. How do you recommend they start?
What a great question. Grab your coffee and let's go. First step is perspective. Perspective is yours. No one gets to dictate your perspective. The easiest analogy I can give you on that is that my kid told me she didn't think she was pretty. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm the most attractive person I've ever met. And I say that unabashedly, and here's why. I can sit there next to my daughter and look at Fortnite skins and say, I don't think that one looks good. And she says, I think it does. And the reality in that conversation is that she gets to dictate what she thinks is beautiful, and I get to dictate what I think is beautiful. With that knowledge, when you look in a mirror, you have the choice of what you see. And if you see yourself as anything but beautiful, that's on you. No one else gets to dictate how beautiful you think you are. And that's perspective. And you get that choice. You get that opportunity. So if you're sitting somewhere in your life and you're thinking to yourself, okay, is the grass greener, or do I really need to change? Like, people tell me I need to change, but do I need to change? Do I want to change? Here's how you know. Okay, there will be a point in time in your life where the pain of moving forward is more than the pain of change. So changing isn't easy. If you're overweight, working out isn't easy. Maybe working out 3 or 4 times is easy, but changing your perspective on your daily schedule is difficult, and it takes time. And when you wake up in the morning, you eventually will train yourself to have the perspective that working out is what gets you through the day. And what you need to associate with is the mindset of the people in that environment, because perspective creates your reality. So if you can carry the perspective of someone who is healthy and fit, you eventually will find yourself healthy and fit. But it's difficult to make that change because of all of the people around you who live in your life and support you and give you information and echo your thoughts and all of that stuff. Those people won't still be there because your thoughts are going to change. The echo is going to change. Everything's going to change, and you just need to be ready to move forward. There's a lot of times in my life that I've changed things. There was one real big change that I went through, and when I did, all my relationships changed, even with parents and friends and all of that stuff. It all changed because I wanted to become a different person. And when I did, the new person doesn't have the same level of relationship as the old version of me, right? And the same thing goes with businesses. Like, if you want to change the direction a business is going, you need to be willing to let go of old beneficial relationships and create new shaky, risky relationships, because that's just the way that it goes. And then you've got to be willing to weather the frustration that is the unknown. And ultimately, you have to function without expectation, because expectation is the fuel for toxicity. There is no reason to have any expectations outside of your own perspective ever. If I expect someone to do X, Y, and Z, they don't do it, it frustrates me. Now I'm thinking on a negative filter on more things in my life, which impact other decisions, which create more negativity. If you're going to change things, the 4 things that you really need to look at are perspective and managing your perspective to see what you want to see and figure out what the people or the businesses that are in the position that you want to be in, what they see, and you want to look at the world the way they do. You want to manage your expectations so that way you're not beholden to the actions of others and your expectations of what they do. And the last thing, I think one of the things that I always try to teach the students, everything in life is built on foundations, right? And a lot of times with an individual, the foundations are like their core values, which is like integrity and all of those things. But in any aspect in life that you want to move forward into, you need to build foundations, because if you want to grow, you need to build on top of things. And foundations are built on results, not desires. So if you desire to be rich, that's not a foundation. A foundation is a failed business. A foundation is a meeting that went poorly. Those are foundations. That's stuff you can build on. That's action. I want to be rich. Here's a great $1 million idea. As a guy who designs businesses and architects business models, I've probably heard $1 million ideas. And I mean, some of them are really good. Like, they're fun to fantasize about. But there is a big difference between sitting around and having coffee and talk about what would be fun and manifesting goals into reality. Like, they're two totally different things. So if you focus on building foundations with actions and results, you focus on changing your perspective, and you focus on expectations and like limiting them, you'll find success and change. And when it all comes down to it, like a person like me who's changed lots of things, the one final vibe that goes through all of them is this simple set of gratitude. Because if you have no expectations, right, and you're acting on things, and you have a solid, stalwart perspective, you are so grateful for people who do things and see things and communicate things. Because there's so much of this world that isn't that. So when you meet a guy like Kevin, who not only has action and personality and character, you want to gravitate towards that. You want to be involved in what that person's doing. And so what that creates from Kevin's perspective is an environment of people who want to come into his space and help him succeed. And it's not hard to become someone who others want to help succeed. You really just have to be happy and have a good, solid perspective and be grateful for what people do for you. And that's, to me, change sounds difficult, but it's actually pretty easy.
I love that.
Man, I don't even know. What do you even say? Like,
I mean, John,
how do I respond to that?
You nailed it. From a Final Vibe podcast standpoint, this is all gold, John, for real.
Dude, I was so drawn into that. I was just staring at my screen, like, hoping you wouldn't stop talking. So I guess I'm a little disappointed in you that you stopped the speech.
Okay, well, I got more. I don't know how these podcasts work. I'm new to this, so.
No, it's really good. No, Kevin, you should chime in. I feel like you have some good thoughts there.
No, I mean, I certainly appreciate that. And I think that a lot of it comes down to creating a vision and then giving other people the opportunity to help you become successful. And if you can spread a message of this vision that you have, and people are also excited about it, and it's mutually beneficial, and it's actually going to make a positive change, I think from my experience, I haven't been in the professional world for very long, but from the few different industries I've been a part of, people just, as John said, they gravitate towards that. They're excited about it, and they want a piece of whatever it is, and they're willing to work hard for it. And as you start to see the fruits of that labor, it just grows and grows and grows.
Really good. John, I'd like to chime in and say that I really resonate with what you're saying about expectations and how expectations are in some sense a product of your own perspective. Because one thing that I find really off-putting in some people that I associate with, or just people in general, is when they play the victim card toward their own circumstances, when really they're just exposing the fact that they don't believe either in themselves or what they're capable of or what they could be doing, and they just don't take the initiative to ignite change. I've often been criticized by my friends and people that love me for being one who lacks sympathy, but I found a glimmer of hope in what you were saying, in that the only reason that I'm sometimes not sympathetic to people who could be doing more is because you have to make that choice to see things differently and take action on it. So if you're unhappy in your job and you want more, maybe there's a way that you could proactively pursue that rather than just being discontent all the time. So I took that out of your speech, which was a wonderful speech and a lovely speech that I'd love to hear again. So thanks for bringing that out.
Well, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what you said there. So, as far as like expectations and empathy and sympathy, I had to go through this big phase in my life where my wife had to teach me what empathy and sympathy was. Because, you know, this may sound strange, but when I go to funerals, I don't get sad. I know everyone's going to die. Like, it's not a surprise to me. And I'm not saying that there isn't a bit of sorrow, but in general, when people are alive, I have engaging relationships with them. Well, like, I'll give you an example. When my grandmother died, everybody was like, I can't believe you're not more upset. And it's like, well, when she was alive, we had an amazing relationship, like utterly amazing. I spent an enormous amount of time with her. Like, if I'm sad now, that's regret that I didn't spend more time with her, or at least the people in the room. That's what you're feeling. I'm not feeling that. I'm feeling pride in my relationship that I had with that individual. And I know at 87, they're not going to last that long. Right. So I struggled with the empathy and sympathy card as well. But I'll tell you from a perspective standpoint how I've managed that. I look at, we just had this conversation not too long ago, but I look at 2020 as one of the most amazing years in our history. And I see a lot of people saying that it's like the worst year ever. Well, first of all, a year on the calendar doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't need to be a great year. Years are going to go by if they're great or not. And to be quite honest with you, every year that you're alive is an amazing year. So you really need to adjust your perspective. But if you look back into this year, all of the amazing things that we have had happen in this country, right? We've come together as a people. We've created a vaccine in like 9 months. We've exposed social injustices. We've created an environment of tolerance that's higher than it's ever been. Like, there's so much we've done as this country in this year that to sit here and say, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to be over, I think that just shows lack of perspective. And it's hard for me to be sympathetic for those people too, because they're just echoing bylines on social media so they can get the adoration or whatever it is that they need from everyone else. But in reality, when you look back on the year, you're like, wow, what a crazy good year this was. Like the development that I have with my kid, like my kid has learned how to be an online student. Now, as we move forward as a society, that's a super important thing to be good at. And she's excelling at it. And she's got all the equipment to do it moving forward. So her opportunities are going to be endless into the near future, right? Like, that's an amazing opportunity. And as a society, we were forced to do it. So if COVID or Corona didn't hit, she never would have been forced to do it. We wouldn't be equipped. All of these teachers wouldn't have learned how to handle it. And that ongoing option wouldn't be there. But it is likely going to be there. As far as like the presidency and all of that stuff, and they see all of the negativity in it. Well, my perspective is you got to work through those problems if you want things to change. One of the things that the president leaving office had said is that, when he was in office, he wanted to make sure things changed. Well, they have, right? The way we look at things, the way we listen to people, all that stuff has changed. And you have to appreciate that, right? You have to have some level of gratitude, to get back to that even though it didn't happen the way that we expected, which caused the toxicity because it didn't happen the way that it was supposed to. 2020 wasn't what it was supposed to be. So I'm angry with it. Is if you remove those expectations and you modify your perspective, you're appreciative of what we were able to accomplish in 2020, then you can see the beauty in it. And I like to tie all that back in because sometimes when I see beauty and stuff and everybody else sees hate, they see me as being unsympathetic. But I'm not. I'm actually super appreciative.
John, let me tee you up for potentially another speech, maybe the final bit of the episode. I'm just curious. We have listeners in that college age range, and we didn't really have enough time. And we will certainly have you back on the show, hopefully in person in studio. We can maybe do a deep dive, but we didn't really have a lot of time to dive into your time in the prior to the 2008 mortgage industry when you said you had a lot of money, and you could probably tell stories from that time if you wanted to make yourself sound like you had it all, where you had money and the party and whatever you wanted. You were surrounded by people who had it, and you could do anything. And then you said in this interview that there was a time 10 years ago, almost to the day, your daughter was born, and you decided that maybe what you wanted in life was different than what you had thought up until that point. So I was that person in high school and college that wanted to have that lifestyle that you probably had, and take the mortgage aspect of it out, but still the success part. So this podcast is about legacy. What was it that changed, and what does legacy mean to you now in your current life?
The change, it's funny. I had a student interview me for a psychology class, and they interviewed me because I was an individual who went through a transformation. And as the interview went on, one of the pertinent questions was, well, what's different about you now? The reality is nothing. I'm still the same guy. I'm still the same guy I was in high school when I was awkward. I'm still the same guy when I was in mortgages. I'm still the same guy I was last year. The what has changed is the way that I see people and treat people. And when I was making money, not I wasn't like overly private jet rich or anything like that. I was just young and had more money than all of my friends my age around me. So I traveled a lot and I had a big house and I had a brand new car and all of that stuff. Come to find out, that was what I thought I needed because everyone around me had that stuff. And one of the reasons that I changed was because I asked people who were a bit older me in the space what their relationship with their kids was like. And a lot of times I'd get the response, my kids won't talk to me. And I'd be like, well, I mean, you live in this beautiful house, you have these beautiful cars, you have a big swim pool. And they're like, yeah, we throw parties all the time, but the kids just won't talk to me. They do their own thing. And they're all on trust funds and all of that stuff. And I just didn't see that as an environment that I wanted to continue in. So once I got to the point that I believed that I had cleaned my slate from the loans that I had did pre 2008, I wanted to do something for me. And I guess that's probably the one change then. I don't know, I'm still figuring it out, right? But the one change then would be, at this point in time of my life, if I am not comfortable with what I'm doing, I don't do it. I don't do anything for anybody else for the most part. I mean, I do for I make things magical for my wife and my kid, and sometimes Kevin, because Kevin's important to me. But for the most part, my legacy going forward is super undefined, and I have no expectations of what it's going to be. All I know is that when I get off this meeting today, I'm going to look at what it's going to take for Mizzou to be more successful in the near future, what it's going to take for colleges to be more successful in the near future. I'm going to put that stuff together over the next 6 months. I'm going to try to educate the older, more established, successful people with inside the community and ecosystem, and show them how they can help us and we can help them, and together we can do great things. And then after that, I don't know. I don't know if it's another school or if it's a different direction. I don't really expect anything but to be happy. And so I guess if you wanted to pin a legacy on me, it's something that is variable. I'm literally down for anything, and I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll solve world hunger, dude. I don't know. I'm ready to go though. Like I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying life. And if you're in a position to where you're grinding and you're persevering uncomfortable scenarios, guess what? That's part of being successful. And the station in life that I'm in is because of great relationships, an amazing wife who is financially supporting me, and a long history of persevering challenges in order to accomplish what my personal goal was, which was to help the industry in general, and at least the banking industry. I don't know, man. I don't. Okay, here's the real answer. I don't think about legacy. Like it's not part of my decision making process. It just happens. Like it's created by action. So I just act constantly, and I don't need a polished history. Like if you look at my history, it is anything but polished. It is mistake and poor decision ridden. Like I could list on more than one hand the things that Twitter could hive mind me about in my past. And I don't I don't function in the production of that. I function forward and into where the space that I want to go into and I want to change. And I'll let everybody else decide what my legacy is.
I love that. I think that's great. I love your perspective on perspective. And I think there's nothing wrong with that answer in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I really respect it because I think sometimes people, and I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, but I think sometimes people feel like they're supposed to say certain things when people ask them about their legacy. They feel like there's some, and you talked about this earlier, but there's some socially expected answer for your legacy. You want to be this, you want to be that, you want to be kind, you want to be generous. Maybe in the end, that's just actually like a self-defense mechanism to want to be viewed as a good person or whatever it may be. So I respect you for just saying that you don't think about it much because it's genuine and it's certainly calculated, though. I don't take you for anything less than a very calculated guy.
I appreciate that. And, it frustrates my kid. I'll tell you one of the most amazing things about having his kid is there is this threshold of BS, for lack of a better term, that doesn't get past kids. And when you're trying to skate by with just saying what needs to be said, you're teaching your kids to say what needs to be said. And if you can look at your kid and say, okay, well, my kid's being honest with me, that likely means you're being honest with them. And being honest with a kid is extremely difficult. Like just the parenting podcast is a whole different conversation because that in and of itself has probably been one of the most complex challenges I've ever taken on in my life. And it's not even halfway over. So from a social perspective standpoint, I believe social media has really hampered the most recent generation because social media is either love or hate. It's like or dislike. And there really isn't this space for indifference. And to give you my perspective on it, I'm a kid of the 90s, right? We watched Saved by the Bell, we listened to Nirvana, and all of those things. We are very indifferent people. Like John Mayer said, we are waiting for the world to change because we lived kind of in the golden age, right? Like life was great. Everybody was making money. You just kind of hung out and did your thing. And there wasn't any like super major challenges that weren't, dramatic events that you'd see on a, TV show about high school, right? That's pretty much what life was, or at least for the most part, right? And now in this social media environment, if you don't have a crafted personality, it's held against you. And it's kind of like the whole Instagram reality. Like you have to doctor your personality, and that's a very unhealthy setup. And I think that's why you see so many emotion management issues is because you have all of these young people who haven't had the opportunity to develop their character because every turn or every corner that they've been faced with a challenge, they haven't been able to make a mistake. So they toe this social appropriate line in order to not be called out because they're afraid of a hive attacking them. They're afraid of being the next viral video of a Karen or something along those lines, right? And it's a scary outcome, right? And it's difficult for young people. And the only thing I'd say, if you're young and you see that perspective in the world, you have to move forward. You can't live in fear. Because if you do, you're not really living. It's not your perspective. They're not your expectations. They're not your desires. They're somebody else's. You're living in someone else's echo. And that's not fun. So take on the challenge. Take on the environment that is being you and making mistakes and building a foundation of character that is based on your decisions and your thoughts and your desires in your life. And when you get there and you look back, you'll realize that all of the successful people that you're surrounded with, because you will be surrounded by successful people, because that's what successful people do, and they can recognize it in others, you all have the same thing in common. You've made way more mistakes than you've made successes. And that's kind of the key, right? And you can't make mistakes if all you're doing is trying to placate everybody else. I mean, I guess that in and of itself is a mistake, but that's another conversation altogether.
Mistake inception. It just keeps rolling over.
I love all this. This is incredible. This is the episode that I will be pointing people to if they are interested in what Final Vibe is about. Because, John, whether you knew it or not, you are living and breathing the Final Vibe lifestyle. And I appreciate your time today. Unfortunately, a downside of recording on a Thursday morning is that we have things to do. We got to wrap it up.
It's your fault, Kevin.
It is my fault. But
John and I are here drinking coffee, living the life, and you're looking at your agenda. No, I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, well, we need Kevin to do that. One of us needs to do it. So I appreciate that Kevin is the guy that does it. Very much so.
But for real, next time you are in town, we would love to have you here and maybe do a Rogan-inspired 3-hour-long extravaganza episode where we can really dive into some of those stories that you were teasing a little bit about the past, because those can be fun just to revisit.
I mean, to a certain degree.
Oh, I think it needs to happen.
Not all of them are fun. I'm going to be real with you.
Kevin, you and I both know that we've been considering the Rogan format of just getting in here and pressing record for 3-4 hours, and we may have found the guy.
I think we have.
So that'll be exciting
for sure.
John, really quick, any thoughts on perhaps how much protein you consume per day before we jump off here and negate possibly the most important question we ask every guest on the show?
How much protein? Okay, so I have a very structured diet. I do not adhere to that structured diet, but I couldn't give you the exact number of protein that I intake per day. But I could calculate it pretty easily because we regularly eat HelloFresh, which the protein is listed for.
Oh.
And my lunch and snacks are all scheduled and portioned. So it wouldn't be very hard for me to calculate it.
Well, very impressive. When you said your diet was really structured, I didn't know if you were setting up everyone for a largely sarcastic joke, but you're serious, and that's awesome. My diet is also very structured, so cheers.
Yeah, well, okay, so as of recently, I've unstructured it with candy, but the actual important food that I eat is all structured.
There you go.
It's the unimportant food that I need to do better at.
Well, I think we all relate to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Kevin's motto for life is train like an animal, eat like crap.
That's right.
And he does that really
anymore.
well.
Whoa, not anymore. Somebody has come into Kevin's life that has shown him the light.
So true. It certainly wasn't me. Kevin, what if we do this in order to respect your work schedule? What if you
wrap it up,
thank John officially, make everybody feel really good about the podcast, and then send us out with an outro that you do really well? Would you do that for us?
I will do it for you. Only for you. John, thank you so much. I wouldn't be surprised if people right now are taking notes and finishing up their notes from this episode because you shared a lot of great things. I really do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Rockstar.
You're the man, John. Thank you.
All right. Don't forget, folks, if you're looking to change your life and focus more on your own legacy, a Final Vibe membership provides you with immediate access to a community of people doing just that, as well as other exclusive content. Today's episode was produced by co-host Andrew White. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to future episodes and tell a friend or two about the powers of Final Vibing. We appreciate all the support that we have received so far, and we hope to see you online. Final Vibe is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Final Vibe. And you can see our blog, previous podcast episodes, apparel, journaling templates, and so much more at finalvibe.com. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday for another episode. Thank you so much for listening.
Have a great week, everyone.